On tonight's episode of the K12 Tech Talk Podcast, we check in on the Baltimore principal who was a victim of the deepfake audio and provide an update on the lingering questions we have about the PowerSchool breach, including talking about what school districts should be doing right now to respond to the PowerSchool breach. Thanks for listening.
Live from the NTP studios, this is the K12 Tech Talk Podcast. I am Josh, K12 Tech Director in Missouri. Chris is here. He's another K12 Tech Director. Hey, Chris.
Hello.
And Mark. Mark, you might have seen Mark, before we let Mark talk, you might have seen Mark on a recent episode of CTV News in Canada.
Hey.
Hello. Hey, Mark. How are you?
I said A, not hey. But
Oh,
okay.
no, that's not how Canadians say A. How you doing, eh?
Hey. I was on Canadian national news this week talking about the
pretty
PowerSchool
crazy.
breach.
It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. All of my friends in Canada said they saw me. I don't have any friends in Canada.
Well, now you do. Millions. You won't find us on, what's it called? I almost said a very bad website. Red Note. You won't find us on Red Note.
No.
But you can email us, k12techtalk@gmail.com. Share us with your friends. We're on all of the popular streaming podcast services, Spotify, iTunes, you name it. Shoot us an email or send us a message over on X, not Red Note.
Yet.
Big news. Any
Yeah.
Yet. No,
Yeah.
I won't be joining.
We'll see what the cool kids do.
Yeah, it's kind of sad scrolling TikTok these days because, like, a lot of them are just like, goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, world. And
I don't have a TikTok.
Here's a dance.
Mark, have you mastered any TikTok dances?
No, I should, though. I should spend the next 3 days.
I was going to say, is you're out as your final video to the world, not a chimp lady. Speaking of chimp lady, one of my son's coworkers knows the chimp lady. Like, really knows her.
It's great.
Yeah.
I've been following Spencer Pratt. You guys know him?
From
The guy from the Hills?
MTV.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Hills. Yeah.
He's blowing up on TikTok. He's back.
Yeah. He's been a big deal.
Okay, we should probably get into
Anyway.
it. We are.
Shout out Spencer.
We are a week out. It's been a week, roughly a week, since the PowerSchool breach hit the news. I won't say we broke the news, but we were pretty early on in reporting on it. And our favorite manifesto writer has an update to his original take on the PowerSchool breach. But before we get to that, Mark, Chris, do you want to talk about Lumu, one of our newest sponsors?
I do. Check out Lumu at lumu.io. If you are drowning in cybersecurity alerts within your district, within your space, Lumu can help you cut through that noise. They can automate responses with all that you have going on. So we know that the bad guys, they can bypass your traditional cyber stack of stuff, your EDR, your firewall, your email security. Lumu can get plugged into your district and help you with all of that with their crazy features. So maybe a new service product to you, but check out Lumu, lumu.io.
Lumu and Doug. All right, Mark. What updates do you have for us in your take on the PowerSchool breach?
Yeah, so there hasn't been a lot of kind of technical updates in the week and a half or so since the announcement. I did link. We'll link this in the show notes. I wrote a kind of an article about what's happened in the last week, and one of the first things I did was link to a few resources that you should really look for if you're looking for all the technical details. So there's a Substack article from Andy Lombardo. K12 6 has published their FAQs, and then obviously the Google Doc from a tech director, Rami Bacchus. She works for the American School in Dubai, I believe. That has been used for everybody who's in a school district looking for the technical details on how to find it. That's where you need to go. So what's happened in the last week? I think we all have gone through PowerSchool's webinar with their CEO and their CISO, and I kind of mentioned in my note that I was very impressed with the level of detail that they shared. It was incredibly, incredibly informative. But in the next few days, there's a lot of questions that came up, and they kind of fall into three categories. So should we kind of dive into the three main questions that we still have? The first one being, how did the account compromise lead to this? Both with how was it compromised? Why didn't MFA stop it? Was there MFA? Was kind of some unknown questions around the level of MFA. Could it, was it insufficient or was it just not in place at all? And then how did one account have access to all of the customers? There's a lot of questions around that. PowerSchool did say that they're going to release the CrowdStrike investigation report. I think that's January 17th or so. So it's coming up.
Yeah, it was coming up. Yeah.
That's a really short time to investigate, but hopefully we'll have some answers to that first question when the CrowdStrike report comes out. Any thoughts on that?
No. I think like you said, it's going to be interesting to see the CrowdStrike report and to see if we can tell if that report has been filtered or distilled down. Yeah. I'm sure there'll be a private report that goes to PowerSchool directly. It'll be interesting to see how much of that content makes it publicly.
Yeah, you surely don't want any, if there is any continuing weaknesses in PowerSchool security, you definitely do not want that published. So
right.
I'm not going to criticize anybody if there's a private and a public version, because
you would expect it.
Yeah. Same thing goes if you're a school district. You should have a private briefing for your board and superintendent.
Yes.
And then your public one. So the second question is, how many districts were impacted by this? This is one that I'm very, very curious on, because we did start to hear towards the end of last week that there were former customers of PowerSchool that were also notified.
Yep.
Oh no.
Thoughts on this?
That sounds bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not ideal. You would assume that when your contract expires and you leave a vendor, that the kind of unsaid rule there is delete my data. But apparently that wasn't happening.
So, okay, question for you on that one. If you're a random ed tech company, that should be the expectation. Delete the, achievement metrics and scores and stuff like that in the roster. If you're PowerSchool, you're holding data that is technically required to be held if it's the only record.
Okay, continue.
So if you are PowerSchool, and let's put ourselves in the seat of a PowerSchool lawyer. You've got a former customer. You can't get in touch with that former customer because we know that school districts don't always keep up their public directories, or people change and ebb and flow. And you've got a customer that has left you guys, and it's about a year later or 6 months later. The agreement isn't very clear into what you're supposed to do with the data. Do you delete data knowing that could actually be the primary data source for former alumni students of that district?
I think you have two scenarios there. I think you have the scenario that you just described, where the customer goes silent and is not communicating. Mm-hmm. But I think there's also a scenario where the customer isn't silent and has informed you that they are migrating to a different product.
Yeah.
To me, if it's scenario B and I have informed PowerSchool that I'm moving to another product, PowerSchool should delete that data. It's on the district's responsibility to maintain that data at that point. But like you said, if it's scenario A where the district just has gone silent and hasn't paid their bill, that's a little gray. I think you have to do some verification there before PowerSchool deletes that data. Yeah. The scenario that I know of, the district told them they were leaving.
Both of those have those great questions of, your SIS, whatever you have, like as a tech over the contracts, do I read the sentences that say if I leave this, that they promise to delete the data in a year, in 6 months, whatever?
I'll better you one. If you've got a DPA with them, a clause in the DPA is data deletion. When you request, they have X number of days to delete the data. So, and we'll get into that's another topic of discussion later in the show, but you need to know where your data is.
So maybe PowerSchool is just reading through 18,000 individual data privacy agreements right now.
Maybe.
All right. And the last question,
that didn't make me feel good at all, Mark.
Sorry, my bad. The last question is related to this though, but different, is how many students were impacted? And the other thing that started to come out towards the middle to end of last week was that school districts were saying, wait a minute, we didn't just have our active students in there. We have all of our former withdrawn alumni students contained in that student export. It was confirmed that the student export did include all students. And so now school districts they've notified some of they notified their active families, and now they got to go back and notify alumni withdrawn students.
That's super cool.
So
how exciting.
Yeah, I mean, do the math on that. If you're a similar sized district to where I work, and you've got 300 kids at grade level, and you've had PowerSchool for 10 years, that's immediately 3,000 kids of graduates potentially, plus your kids that withdraw mid-year. So say another 300 to 400 kids, plus your current enrollment, which would be roughly 3,600 to 4,000 kids.
Yep.
You're reaching close to 10,000 kids real quick.
Simple math, boys. Simple
Plus your
math.
staff.
My former district was the first school district in the country. Got to drop that factoid here because we here in Boston love to just say that we're the first for everything. We had 500 some odd thousand students, archive students in our system. So that's one district.
Not PowerSchool.
No, not PowerSchool. That's one district. Now you got a class action lawsuit that's dropped like 800,000. There's no way it's anywhere close to 800,000.
No.
It's got to be millions, if not tens of millions of students, if we're talking about active and former students.
It probably 10 times that.
Yeah. Yep. Well, South Carolina, the example I gave was South Carolina. They're an entire state that uses PowerSchool, and they have 800,000 students in the state. It's active students. So
that's active. That doesn't include graduated.
correct. So add 60,000 a year for South Carolina, and you're looking at a massive amount. And if you do the back of the envelope math, this is not at all
What if I use a
accurate math
napkin?
here. You can use a napkin too.
Paper towel.
But South Carolina is a small, I think it's a 0.5% of PowerSchool's overall clientele. So we're looking at an unknown number of students, but a rather significant one at the very least.
Man, that number is mind blowing.
Yeah. So I end the article with a couple silver linings. I did say, and again, I don't mean to kind of underscore or diminish this, but we got a little bit lucky that PowerSchool was up and active. And so, I talked a little bit about what would happen if we had data exfiltration on top of a system being out last week when everybody came back to school. We'd be talking about students sitting at home for possibly days. And then this conversation, I think that's the other silver lining of this whole thing, is that the entire industry is talking about this right now, and changes will happen.
It's going to be really interesting to see the conversations that take place because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from providers proving that they have ISO certification, that they're meeting an ISO standard or a NIST standard. Well, like you can say this because if you look at DPAs that are signed by PowerSchool, they said they were meeting a standard. I believe it was the ISO standard. I would really question those ISO audits at this point. Like who was doing them? Show me that you were getting that stamp of approval, because I have some serious questions.
Yeah, PowerSchool is SOC 2 Type 2 certified. They have been for a few years. And so, yeah, there's a lot of questions around if these are some of the industry standard certifications. How much can we rely on them?
So does that then call into question that certifier's capability and ability to continue to certify?
It's really hard to say. It all depends on the outcome of the CrowdStrike report in terms of what happened and how did it happen. And then the questions are going to come down like, is this something that is covered under SOC 2? Or is there a weakness in how it was analyzed and reevaluated, how it was reported by PowerSchool, how it was reported maybe by a subcontractor? We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're a week out from notification. We're not even a month out from the incident. Again, for all that has transpired, I still think we have good data, good information in a relatively quick manner. Like you can complain that the notification didn't happen fast enough, and likely not within standard of if you have an agreement or your state law.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting that. But show me another breach of this magnitude that had a notification go out to clients with as much actionable and real data that was included in those webinars that the CEO and their CISO gave. I still say that's worth a good job, guys, there.
Yeah, I was initially a little bit critical of PowerSchool about the notification timeline until I attended the webinar and heard just how much they shared, which was very incredible. Still, again, lots of unknown questions, and that's what the purpose of my post was, of like just kind of wrap up these questions into the main categories. But I think PowerSchool has set a high bar for communication. But I do say I hope they keep it up. Like,
yes.
At this point, they've been hit with 3 class action lawsuits.
Yeah.
You probably have a lot of lawyers in the room at all hours of the day scrutinizing exactly what to do. So we're out of the fire, and now that the embers are still hot, you've got a lot of other chefs in the kitchen that are going to influence communication. I hope PowerSchool can continue and improve and improve upon their communication, but we'll see.
I think that fire is just getting started.
We've kind of wanted to say it out loud, I guess. The PowerSchool, like the public facing website FAQ stuff, it kind of felt like it got a little nicer, prettier.
Yeah.
Again, you kind of wonder. You wonder, are you going to be? Did you do like the one big push for transparency, and are you going to pull it back for a while? That doesn't help the K12 techs and the K12 folks know what to do next.
Or did a fancy pants lawyer come in and say, you're not saying that again?
It's a little, I think that was my initial response when I saw the FAQ was it feels very polished, very sanitized in comparison to what we saw in the webinar, but we'll see.
Yep.
All
right. Should we go on to new news?
Before that, let's talk about Visor, Vizor. Use Visor for your one-to-one program. They can help you out with your inventory, your barcode checkout and check-in, and more. If you head over to visor.cloud/K12 Tech, K12 Tech, is that right? Visor.cloud/K12. You can do a 30-minute demo with them and get some swag of ours if you'll do that. So check out Visor.
All right. I don't think we should say new news. Some other very popular podcast has that phrase. So on to it. So it's been a rough, week and a half for ed tech providers. News of a massive breach from Scholastic this week. 8 million data on 8 million people stolen by did I read this right, Mark? A furry hacker?
A furry hacker.
Please describe that.
Yeah, can you tell our listeners, Mark, that might not be in tune to the same realm? Maybe you are what a furry is.
To be clear, I am not a furry myself, if that's what you are insinuating. I don't get why they call it a furry hacker. I mean, I guess it's a hacker that is a furry in their a furry is
pictures.
Yeah, a furry is somebody who dresses as an animal in a very cartoonish style costume, very
like a
elaborate
plush toy.
Yeah, and we won't go into
it's a whole subculture.
It's a culture. And a hacker going by the alias Parasocial is apparently a self-proclaimed furry hacker, stole a bunch of Scholastic data for fun. Again, that's his exact words, for fun. No ransom, nothing. Just said, here it is, world. 8 million people.
Yeah. What was that? Yesterday, I guess, had a Have I Been Pwned notification. Hey.
So
gotcha.
Here's my question for you when I was trying to research this. Have you heard anything from Scholastic?
No, I can't say that I have.
Okay, because I scoured Scholastic's website and I couldn't find anything. I know they've got a bunch of different websites with all the different, areas here, but I couldn't find anything. Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out, is this real? Is this reported? What's going on here?
So can we draw a comparison between Scholastic's non-ownership of this and PowerSchool's ownership of their breach?
Yeah.
You have two, granted, one is way smaller than the other, but still diametrically opposite of each other in the way that they're handling this breach.
Now we should also add we're recording this on Tuesday the 14th, and so if this in the time between when we record this and when the episode airs, that Scholastic has come out and say something, hey, kudos to you for that. But right now, we got nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay,
all right. Another. I'm just gonna refrain because I can't probably make it through this without an inappropriate joke. Mark, why don't you take the next one?
There's a great organization called Whiteboard Advisors, and they've published a briefing on what they believe Linda McMahon's policy priorities are going to be in her term. Notice I didn't say her first term. In her term, there's a lot of stuff.
Appointment. I don't know that you can call it a term. Can you? Can we just
sure.
It's an appointment? She's serving as the head of DOE.
Yeah. There's not really too much in here that's relevant to ed tech, but one of the things that raised kind of a flag in my mind is they're saying that that they believe
leotards versus singlets.
Yeah, it was really the outfits that wrestlers will be wearing.
Get out of here!
No, it's they raised the topic of that one of the things that has been really pushed around the conservative areas is this idea of parents being able to review curriculum. So should the Department of Education make it required that school districts publish or make available their curriculum to parents to view? How do we actually do that? Because I think our folks are going to have to be involved in something like that, or will they? They do mention in here there's about 12 states that do this already, and you guys said before the show Missouri is one of them. So
yeah.
Tell us how this is done.
I could be totally wrong here, but for the last couple of years, we've had it available to where if a parent wants to inspect curriculum, they're able to come in and meet with building administrators or district administrators and inspect that curriculum, the units of study, yada, yada, yada. Kind of the conversation goes along with being a tuned in parent or being an involved parent. None of that really should be a surprise to you. Like you should be informed with regular communication from your student's teacher about what they're doing in the class anyway. I agree that parents should have the ability to do this, and it does nothing but add that layer of transparency for school districts, because school districts often get beat up about they're teaching the woke agenda. They're teaching things I don't agree with. Well, one way to combat those types of statements is to make it available to be seen and not hide behind, not hiding that information. So I agree with it. I don't know that it's right to make it required. Local control, it's different here in Missouri, but I think it's a fine idea.
So I don't know if parents have come into your school, if you've been able to put this into practice, but does this mean that at any given time, you've got 180 days worth of curriculum that a parent can come in and read all of that and view it? And
yeah,
have parents actually exercised that?
I've known of a handful.
Wow.
We have ours through our school website. And it's, a more advanced Google site with a lot of Google folders and a lot of Google Docs and uploads. And our teachers would meet and go over things with curriculum. And I just clicked around on it. It's broken down by grade level and then by subject area. And there's the pacing guides and the units. And it's, anything that you would want public. Of course, it's not showing assessments. It's not showing the actual assignments, but it's pretty stinking detailed. And I know I've laughed at the site because it was developed before Google came out with shared drives and super complicated, on the sharing and keeping up with who's assigned to who and who has access to what folder and who's the editor and who's the owner and all that kind of stuff. And we've started to move over to something better than this, but it's there, it's living, it's breathing. I have to think that it's not always up to date just because of sheer movement of teachers come and go and curriculum gets updated, it changes. But the idea of it is that, you can click on our website. and you could click on a pacing guide and click on a unit and see what your child should be learning about.
Yeah.
Do the publishers allow you to do this? Because I guess that's the other question too. You're making proprietary material public from what you've just described.
I don't know that it's the actual content. I think it's a unit of study like we are, and how it aligns with Missouri learning standards. So we are tackling Missouri learning standards ABC A.24, and we're going to use this resource and do this activity, and we're going to measure comprehension by doing this. It's more along those lines. It's not actually sharing, pages 15 through 25 out of a textbook. It's what you're going to do, what activity you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and then how you're going to measure comprehension of that activity.
See, that makes sense. I just wonder how much of this is driven by political desires, as you mentioned before, to attack the woke agenda. Like, how can you do that without actually inspecting the raw materials and the curriculum, which is proprietary? So,
yeah,
interesting. So, perhaps we'll be supporting our districts with setting up different websites and links to syllabi.
Don't do what I just said.
Oh, okay then.
Actually, ours is in a shared
Google
Drive. Yeah, because if the person that owns Chris's folder leaves and you disable that account, everything off in the ether.
How we are is a lot of work on the tech department.
The problem with shared Google Drives, and we're going down a rabbit hole here. The problem with shared Google Drives is that they can't be published externally. So I think that's probably part of the reason why we ask parents to come in to inspect, because we don't publish that outside. I don't know.
Got it. All right. Well, the last the last news article is an update on something we talked about a long time ago. Remember the principal who there was a deepfake audio made of him, and it turned out it was the athletic director.
Yeah.
And the athletic director then obviously got fired for making a fake deepfake of the principal's voice. Well, he's back. And he has filed a lawsuit against his school district.
On what grounds?
In this, the plaintiff alleges that the Baltimore County Public Schools' inaction to correct the record on the audio evidence allowed the national destruction of his reputation to go on while he endured public humiliation and violent threats. I can't deny that was a very hard area for him. I don't know what the school district did or did not do. The interesting thing is he's also suing for negligence in hiring, retention, and supervision, meaning the district didn't do enough in that area, which I thought the story was that it was the principal who's supervising the athletic director.
Right.
And that relationship didn't go well, and that's why the athletic director then made this. So is he saying that he didn't do a good job supervising? I don't know. So yes. We're back here now. We have a school district in the hot seat once again for a deepfake lawsuit.
Interesting.
This has been one of my examples to share with teachers on what is AI and what can it do, because I just think these are things that you can expect to happen more and more.
Yeah.
Because this was just kind of like the first one that we heard about, but as soon as we give AI to the kiddies, it's over.
Yeah. In the article, it also mentions that 43% of surveyed teachers had heard about sexually explicit deepfakes in their school. So it's coming. It's here. There's a good number of teachers who are already experiencing this stuff. So,
which is crazy.
Yeah. And that's it for the news for this week.
Thanks, Mark.
By the way, check out ClassLink, like clever but better. Go to classlink.com. They can do your SSO, your rostering, and more.
So the main topic for tonight, and it again revolves around this PowerSchool breach, but it doesn't necessarily have to be PowerSchool. It could be the Scholastic breach. It could be any number of third-party breaches where you're holding data. But there's some overwhelming topics that keep coming up, and right now it just happens to be around this PowerSchool breach. What should districts be doing or know the requirements for notification to parents? What state agencies do they need to notify, or do they have to notify law enforcement? And where does this land with data privacy agreements? What water do data privacy agreements hold in a scenario like this? So let's start at the beginning. Should districts be worried about notifying their parents in a breach like this? And I mean, it's the hot topic. Let's use the PowerSchool breach as an example. Mark, if your district, if you're, rewind the calendar a year and you're back at your old big district, and let's say they used PowerSchool, they didn't. In this scenario, would you be quick to notify your parents? Yeah. See? Okay.
I mean, I'll take it one step further. I think even if you're not a PowerSchool district, the attention that this has gained, I would be surprised if school districts said they also haven't received questions from parents. I think that even if you're not a PowerSchool SIS customer, you probably should at least send a brief message out, say, you may have heard on the news, but we're not impacted. So yeah, at the very, very least, everybody should be notifying districts or families if you're a customer impacted by a breach.
I'm asking my boss and asking the attorney.
Really? You're
like,
not.
They'll tell me something, right? They'll say don't send letter or do send letter.
To a degree, but I mean, you have anecdotal stories of districts being told by attorneys, don't worry about it right now.
Okay, so Chris is kind of technically right that the notification should be your lawyer and your superintendent, but like I'll follow what Josh is just saying. Chris, what happens if your lawyer says, "Nah, don't say anything. Sweep this one under the rug"?
Then I'm asking my boss. I don't know. We'll see what he says.
That would be one of those scenarios where there would be an email.
Yeah.
Documenting your objection to that. Like,
yeah.
From a Mark, I think before the show you would use the word ethical. From an ethical standpoint, as a public entity and the data that we house, by God, you have a responsibility to tell parents when something like this has happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if it's not something as public as PowerSchool, if it's like a vendor that parents wouldn't know about, you still
Scholastic. Yeah. Take the substitute PowerSchool for the Scholastic breach that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
No,
there could be. Man, I'm going to say this so much. It'll come up later in my life. If I'm told no by attorney, by boss, I write the email of objection, and possibly an anonymous Facebook post gets made.
Oh yeah,
no,
don't even joke about that.
No.
You just don't know.
Oh.
By the way, on K12 Tech Pro, we do have an anonymous tips line. If your school's been hacked and you want to share with your neighbor, but you can't because of attorneys, you can submit that. We'll share it out.
Oh my God.
Next
category. I don't know.
Yeah, let's ignore that one.
Yeah. I'll see you guys in court.
Next category you mentioned, Josh, was state agencies. What are your obligations to report to your state?
This is where you have to know your state law. State laws can vary wildly as far as the clock that you have ticking from when you find out to you have to notify parents, constituents, or state agencies. Everything from Department of Education to state auditor to the Attorney General. In Missouri, the notification should be to DESE and the auditor's office, and the state statute says if it is more than 1,000 people, that you have to also notify the Attorney General's office. And there are very prescriptive timeframes that those notifications must take place. The state auditor has a website with a form that you can fill out. DESE has a fillable PDF that you can download and send to them. I didn't find anything for the Attorney General's office. Again, that's all for the state of Missouri. And like I said, these vary wildly state to state, but I think you're going to see a little bit of commonality among them.
Yeah.
And this is the one I want to bank on. I want my state to tell me what to do. I want there to be a number established. Give me how many days, give me how many students. Going back to what my boss is saying or what attorney says, this is what you can bank on. They have to go off of this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to break the law,
And some of the qualifiers for the state of Missouri was student data that included an identifiable number assigned to them, which included social security number. That would be the MOSIS number, stuff, other protected information as well. I had that was the story. The district said their attorney said this, they didn't have to notify because the information taken was just directory information. And I said, no, directory information is only directory information when it's used in the manner which you disclose to the parent at the beginning of the year. Anything outside that disclosure, that data is no longer directory information. So that, to me, and that came straight from PTAC at a FERPA 101 session in October at a conference. To me, that was very, very, very bad advice from their attorney.
I hate to say it, but in some states, he's exactly right. Because I was researching a few different states. I looked at California, Massachusetts, New York, some of the big ones, and then some other smaller states. And they define a breach very, very specifically as containing certain pieces of information. And in some states, that did not contain the information that would have been in PowerSchool.
No kidding.
So the definition of breach is the first thing you need to know in your state. And then from there is what you have to do if this is a breach or not, and then what you need to do. And so that's unfortunate that there's no consistent answer from state to state.
Right.
And then even within every single state, you've got to understand the definition of a breach and being able to apply that to a system. All the more reason to know your vendors and know what information they have moving forward.
Law enforcement. Are you notifying law enforcement in a breach like this? The PowerSchool one, that's an easy one because apparently law enforcement was already engaged during the investigation.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to re-notify. But I imagine when you start notifying state agencies, especially the Attorney General's office, there's probably a referral to law enforcement that takes place there. But yeah, law enforcement is definitely one of those things that you need to keep top of mind. And that's why you need to have good relationships with local FBI office anyway.
I think it might be something that you reach out if you know your local CISA or FBI rep, it's first to reach out to them and let them know that you're part of a breach like PowerSchool. But I hate to say this, I don't think school districts are necessarily obligated because the crime wasn't committed against them. It was the vendor themselves. So long story short, that's what law enforcement and your legal attorney is going to be able to say. But I've had a couple of incidents where I've been involved with law enforcement and they've had to turn me away and say, the crime wasn't committed against you. It was committed against somebody else. And therefore they're the one that needs to submit the police report.
Your server wasn't technically hacked. It was PowerSchool server that was technically hacked.
Yeah. Now, there again, this is where everybody's in a different position. Every state's different. You know, if you own the PowerSchool server and it was an on-premise server and it's on site, that could be perceived in one way or another. But I mean, ultimately, in the PowerSchool, we know that they're ultimately responsible for notifying law enforcement. Then you have a local question as to whether or not you have to do as well.
And finally, something that's come up
near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, I said before the show I've got the tattoo, and this has come up in a number of conversations today. Is where do data privacy agreements stand in this whole debacle? It's no secret PowerSchool had signed DPAs in the state of Missouri with I think 10 or so districts. Granted, there's no prescriptive damages in the DPA, but it just outlines what the provider should be adhering to and doing at the request of the LEA. It's Mark, you had said before the show that it's going to be really interesting to see where we land after this.
Yeah.
The value of a DPA.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I don't think school districts are going to have a leg to stand on in terms of a lawsuit. There will be there's already multiple class action lawsuits. So there, if there's a class action lawsuit that gets settled, the individual districts, it's going to be hard for them to, file additional lawsuits against
No,
PowerSchool.
but those lawyers are going to make out like bandits.
The lawyers across the country are going to just, move on from that one.
So some of the language in this DPA. So the DPA's agreed to PowerSchool had input a statement that said the total and aggregate liability and indemnity obligations by either party under the DPA is and shall remain subject to the exclusions, limitations, and liability and indemnity provisions set out in the applicable service agreement. So that statement right there says whatever damages you're going to go after, they have to meet, they have to apply the damages in the service agreement that you have signed with PowerSchool. So you better know your agreement, your service agreement with PowerSchool forward and backward. And any vendor, insert the vendor. You know, we're saying PowerSchool because it's the most recent.
And I would say as a school district that uses PowerSchool, what are the damages?
Right
now?
Because really, it's a PR thing, right? Yeah. The district really has suffered PR damage, not a monetary loss at this point.
Yeah, because that guy deleted it for sure, and they watched him stomp it into the mud. And
yeah, he gave a pinky promise that he wasn't going to release it.
So if the data is never used, if it never sees the light of day,
is that in the parent letter? PowerSchool promises that they watched the man stomp it with his boot.
I think they did say something to that to the extent. But if PowerSchool provides credit monitoring to families or they don't, right, and there's never any sort of damages, nobody has, and you're going to have to prove damages. Like, it means you're going to have to prove that a bank account was created as a direct result of this data breach.
Or a credit card was taken out.
Yeah. We're very speechless in terms of like where this can go. But long story short, there's just going to be a whole lot of lawyers that just argue back and forth over the efficacy of data breach agreements and what this means.
You know, it's funny you bring up credit monitoring service, and okay, let's just say they come out and they say we're going to pay for everybody to have credit monitoring service for a year. Great, but what happens? The bad guys are going to see that press release. They're just going to wait 13 months to do something.
Right.
You are, if you're included in this breach, you are way better off freezing your credit with all three agencies than relying on any sort of credit monitoring service. You can do it for free. It can be undone in a heartbeat. Just don't forget your passwords.
I think my data has been involved in so many data breaches at this point that I've got credit monitoring for life. Like,
I don't think you can stack them though, Mark. I don't think you can make it congruent like that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the real value of credit monitoring service is anymore. Especially
it makes us feel good.
Credit. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Whatever.
It's a feeling.
So we just talked about parents, state agencies, law enforcement, and data privacy agreements. What if you're a school district in the PowerSchool breach? What are you obligated to do right now? Like, sum it up. What should we be doing, Josh?
I think at a minimum notifying parents, and I think you're starting to have a hard conversation about notifying withdrawn and graduated students next. And we say parents, but if those people, if their graduated students are over the age of 18, that the kid needs to be notified. I say kid, but they're an adult.
Yeah.
You probably should be notifying DESE. DESE probably already knows about it. They probably got a list going. That's going to be one of those uncomfortable conversations that your superintendent probably isn't going to want to notify DESE because they don't want to get on that radar. They don't want to get on the radar of the auditor's office or the
that's
attorney
the only
general.
obligated, like that's the only law, like I have to do this one.
Depending on your state law, and you need to know your state's privacy laws. But yes, in Missouri, the big ones are DESE, auditor's office, and if it's over 1,000 people affected, attorney general for Missouri. Those are all not fun conversations to have.
Yeah, because this is like, well, that DPA didn't work out. I don't have to tell the cops it wasn't actually me. I should tell the parents.
Yeah.
And I got it. Probably my state, I have to tell somebody bigger than me.
But if you have a leadership that's taking the stance of, I don't want to be on anybody's radar, this wasn't our fault. It wasn't our hardware. They didn't really attack us. They attacked our vendor. It's the vendor's responsibility to do these notifications, not mine. That's to me, that's a hard conversation. I'm not sure I would agree with that stance.
I had a neighboring school district that years ago for sure had student data hacked, exposed, exported, and they went completely quiet. No letter sent home. Like it was just, I mean, just literal crickets. Tech department didn't communicate anything out. It was just rumor for weeks, and then it got quiet, on the rumor side as well, and then it just kind of went away. And that can be okay if nothing bad happens down the road with the data. But that's a terrible way, a terrible look, ethics and all those things. Like,
well, like you said,
what are we doing?
All it takes is one anonymous Facebook post or one anonymous call to the auditor's office.
I thought
says,
that was,
hey.
I think Mark said that. I didn't say that.
Right. It was Mark that said that. All it takes is one anonymous phone call to the Attorney General's office. And if they're looking to make a name for themselves and they want to string up public ed, what better way to do that than go after a school district that looks like they were trying to hide a breach?
Yeah.
Yeah, not a good look. Chris, do you want to talk about managed methods real quick?
Yeah, a great look. You should take a great look at managed methods. Go to managemethods.com. They give you easy, affordable student safety monitoring for your school district. They know that you can be on a tight budget. They can help out with that. They can look at your Google Workspace, at your Office, at your Microsoft 365, and see what's going on in there, and help you track what's going on. So check out managemethods.com.
I got a call from Managed Methods today, actually. We're recording this early because a couple of us are busy Thursday night. You know what's going to happen. The report from CrowdStrike is going to come out on Thursday because we're not recording Thursday night.
I welcome it.
I think they had said on Friday this week. I think the date I heard was the 17th. So
4:00 Friday, just as everyone's leaving the office for the weekend and the holiday weekend.
Sure.
All right. Any other good news to look forward to in the next week, Mark?
I mean, you know my political opinions, so you know how I would answer that question.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, inauguration's Monday.
Some of us are more excited than the others.
Well, one.
Hey, we do have, if you have any Forta questions or needs, if you want to look at a Forta product, email fortinetpodcast@fortinet.com. But we do have something cool coming up. It's on January 28th. The Secured Schools Learning Technology Center virtual event is happening January 28th, and we have 2 sessions that we're presenting at that thing. So I'll put a link to this in the podcast description. Come and hang out with us. I'm sure Mark, right, Josh? Mark's going to make us some really cool presentations.
Yeah, he makes the best slides.
We're going to kick butt at this thing.
On it.
Hang out with us at it.
If you're watching the calendar, it is, what is it, Friday? You can start submitting 471s if your 28-day waiting period is over. So it's officially that season, the good old E-rate 471 season.
Mark, are you doing E-rate anymore? Is this like...
No, I'm free.
Cool, man.
My current customers were free.
Congratulations.
Free. Yeah.
Mark, do you have any visits or...
do you have a life, Mark?
No. Are you going to be on CTV anytime soon again, Mark?
I don't know. I'll let you know. I mean, there's a lot of news going on in Canada, so maybe they'll reach back out and ask me my thoughts.
Yeah.
To fully say it, tell the story. We can post this link too, but pretty cool. We had a quick reach out from Canadian TV. Needed a security expert, a cybersecurity expert named Mark. To go and talk about this PowerSchool breach stuff.
It was also weird that they asked for someone named it, like their name had to be Mark.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I did it, guys, and
so Mark went on there.
You're welcome, Canadians.
Hey.
And we enjoyed it.
Yeah, I told them everything that the PowerSchool breach entailed and what it was all about, and I think it went well.
And that you enjoyed poutine.
I told them how much I enjoy their combination of gravy and French fries, and
cheese curds, right?
And I gave them some tips. I gave them some tips on bacon. I thought that what Canadians have done with bacon is just not. It's just ham.
Oh yeah, it's ham.
So yeah, and that was the gist of the interview.
Huh. But we'll share a link to the real interview on CTV.
It was a lot shorter than that.
Yeah, it was. It was quite a bit shorter than that.
Yep.
And there was no mention of poutine. All right. Well, that's been a week. We thank you for listening. Share us with your friends. Shoot us an email, k12techtalk@gmail.com. We're over on X as well. We won't be on Red Note. We will see you next week. Thanks for listening.
We might not be the same. You share the same pain that I do.
The views and opinions expressed on the K12 Tech Talk podcast are the personal opinions of Josh, Chris, and Mark, and do not represent the views or opinions of our sponsors or other organizations that we're affiliated with. The material and information presented here is for general information and entertainment purposes only. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
We were buying words about the phrase of the way and selling songs just to